The parable, that's a parable Jesus taught his followers. And he said, Jesus spoke to them again in parables, saying, the kingdom of heaven may be compared to a king who gave a wedding feast for his son. And he sent out his slaves to call those who had been invited to the wedding feast, and they were unwilling to come. Now, we know the story of Israel. We know that Jesus is actually referring to Israel there, that they refused to come to the marriage wedding feast. Again, he sent out other slaves, saying, tell those who have been invited, behold, I have prepared my dinner, my oxen and my fattened livestock, and all butchered, and everything is ready. Come to the wedding feast. Again, there's another invitation to the people of Israel, but they paid no attention and went their way, one to his own farm, another to his business. And the rest seized his slaves and mistreated them and killed them. But the king was enraged, and he sent his armies and destroyed those murderers and set their city on fire. Then he said to his slaves, the wedding is ready. In other words, no matter if they didn't want to come, the wedding is still ready. And somebody needs to come to the party. Now, we as chaplains, we are those people that's willing to do the extra thing and to go the extra mile. He said to his slaves, the wedding is ready, but those who were invited were not worthy. And we know Jesus was talking about the Jews, and this is the parable about the Jews rejecting Christ. Go therefore, he says, to the main highways, and as many as you find there, invite to the wedding feast. Isn't this amazing? This is kind of a instruction for us as chaplains to go therefore to the highways, to be a highway chaplain, to be a chaplain wherever there's people, to be that chaplain going on the streets. Those slaves then, Jesus said, went out into the streets and gathered together all they found, both evil and good. So we know that we do not clean them, we only catch them. You know, you put a hook on your, and bait on your hook, and you put it into the water, and Jesus said, I'll make you fisher of men. Now, Jesus didn't say you have to fish them, get them, and also clean them. We catch them, Jesus cleans them. So, and the wedding was as filled, the hall was filled with dinner guests. In other words, people that was good and bad. So, and this is the thing about chaplaincy. You know, in church, they'll accept you into their fellowship if you do this and that. But for a chaplain, we work another way, because we accept anybody. But when the king came, Jesus said, when the king came in to look over the dinner guests, he saw a man there who was not dressed in wedding clothes. In other words, this person, he slipped in, he wasn't clean appropriately. And then what happened to this man? Jesus, and he said to him, friend, how did you come in here without wedding clothes? And the man was speechless. So in other words, we know as chaplains, as soon as we introduce the community to our church folks, they'll need to go through some process of discipleship, training, and etc. But some will still come in, and they will be speechless when they are identified. But still, we won't reject them. We'll still love them. Now, I want to conclude with verse 14. For many are called, but few are chosen. We see it every day in our lives that many are called, but few are chosen. Maybe you feel that you have been called, you know, you have been called by your name, like Israel was called, but you know, God chose you for this purpose. For this season, God has chosen you to be his vessel out there on the streets. An amazing question to do evangelism amongst the people on the streets. I mean, you can ask a question like, hey man, tell me if your children would ask you, explain to me Christianity, would you be able to do that? And obviously you'll not put the person in a corner for, you know, the only reason why I'm asking this is because many people have been asked this question, but we divert to answer this question directly because we even can't explain the fact why we are Christians. We cannot explain that fact, but when you walk the talk and you have been on this way of the Lord Jesus for so many years, then obviously it becomes easier. But for the new convert, it will be difficult to explain to people on the street why and why are you a Christian? This is my question to you tonight. I want to conclude with this. Why are you a Christian? Because somebody will ask you that question. If it's your children, it's best you answer them well in that regard. Let's pray. Father God, we want to thank you in this morning for this opportunity, this evening, for this opportunity we have just to reflect on your word in Matthew, where you have invited all of these people to come to the wedding feast, and they have rejected you. They don't want to come, but we want to report on duty tonight, Lord, and we want to share our hearts tonight with one another. We want to share the compassion of Christ in this world, and you can only use available vessels, and we want to report for duty. We want to be available for this duty as chaplains. In the precious name of Jesus, our Lord and Savior, send us to the streets, Lord. Send us out on the streets to invite people in to the marriage feast. In Jesus' name, amen. Okie dokie. So here we go, people. So you'll just stop me when you have a question tonight, because there will be some times you'll feel, oh my goodness, this is just too much to bear. Yeah, then you'll just stop me for a bit and ask the questions. Don't feel dumb when you ask a question, because if you don't know something, you'll have to ask. All right, so we're going to speak on confidentiality tonight, and the topic was also a topic in our first level of training. And the reason why it's here again tonight is because of its importance. We're going to discuss a little bit in depth confidentiality and the clergy-client privilege. You can find that on page 10 if you want to follow in your manual. You're most welcome to do so. Yes, you can find it there. Confidentiality is about how the chaplain handles information that comes to him or her. And it will tell a lot about your personality. Yeah, it will tell a lot about who you are as a chaplain. And obviously, people will trust you, in regards of confidentiality. Let me just see if I can share my screen. Pastor Mac, would you just mind giving me permission to share my screen real quick? Thank you so much. We're like a soundboard for some people, chaplain. When people come to see you, you are like a soundboard to them. They will tell you things they haven't told anybody else, because they put you in a trusting relationship, because you're out there in the streets, you're out there in the marketplace, not trying to get their tithing or trying to get their offering or trying to get them on board in your church, whatever the case may be. No, not that. You're there for their care, and therefore they would obviously look upon you as a trustworthy vessel. They'll look upon you as a person of trust. And that is what we want to establish in the communities, is that we want to build relationships. We want to understand the basics of communication, as well as the skills behind communication, because communication is not to be taken lightly. As a chaplain, you need to define yourself. You need to relate yourself and study books on communications and how to prepare yourself for communicating with people out there in the marketplace, because they will ask you some tough questions out there. It is not to say that the chaplain will have all the answers, but obviously you'll have a repertoire of other chaplains which you can communicate with on WhatsApp or on FaceTime calls and so on and so forth, to help the person who is in a desperate need of some answers. So don't be afraid of questions out there, because that is the basics of communication. And if you have the skill of good communication, obviously you won't divert every question coming to you, but obviously you'll respect the person posing the question, even if that's confronting your beliefs. As a Christian, it confronts your beliefs as a Christian, and they say, for example, that Allah and Yahweh is the same gods, and you become angry, your face becomes red. Obviously, chaplain, you have lost control over the situation. It's better you withdraw then than to lose control in that situation. So in this process of communication, and especially when it comes to confidentiality and the clergy client privilege, you need to understand as chaplain, you will have to have the communications ability of listening. That is a great communication skill, some of the best, obviously. You need to tell your wife tonight, my wife, Pastor Lotta, said, if you want to have good communication skills, you have to listen. You've got 2 ears and 1 mouth. Listen double, and then you speak. Okay. So what we're going to do tonight is, let me just move on to the next slide. I just want to put my pointer up here. I'm sorry. I just want to just quickly exit and get my pointer first. It doesn't want to give me my pointer. All right. Doesn't matter. I'll just do this again. I'm sorry, I don't see my pointer, but maybe you'll see something here. But let me show you this little small insert. Did you see that? Can you see the balls aren't moving in circles? Each ball is moving in a straight line. It's all about perception, what you perceive. Listen, look at that. Every ball on the board is moving in straight lines, actually. It's not moving in circles. It just looks and appears for you to, it's moving in circles. That's what perception is. And so what does one ball is added at a time? Straight line. And then the next. And then the next. See what's happening? This is an example how perceptions could be different from reality. And in chaplaincy, we've learned and taught you in level 1 that perception is reality. What you perceive is your reality. Look at that. Every ball is moving in a straight line. It only appears to move in circles. Don't be judgmental. Remember, it's just your perception. You can find that on YouTube, Brush Soap. Well, that's interesting because, you know, when we speak about confidentiality and what we perceive, when people tells us important and confidential information, you need to understand that what you perceive concerning that person has been telling this lie to his wife for so many years. What does confidentiality mean to you as a person? What does it mean to you as a person? This is a definition, obviously, but you do not have to be worried about the definition. But my question to you tonight is, what does confidentiality means to you? Do you protect confidences of people, especially in church, especially in the marketplace, especially where you operate as a chaplain? Maybe it can be the telecom officers, it can be even the Roman's Pizza personnel. If they confide in you, how do you take care of their confidence? Definition of confidentiality is as follows: an agreement between 2 or more persons based on faith, acknowledging that transactions, both verbal and written, are held in trust as personal, private, and are to be professionally protected. Can you see that? So we are protecting people's privacy professionally. Why? Because we are chaplains and we do know how to do that. This is also a disclaimer for you as a chaplain, and my humble request is that you will always adhere to in protecting the confidences of people out there, because when you stop protecting their confidence and obviously maintaining their trust, because if you have a person's confidence, you have to maintain it. You have to maintain it. Like, for example, when you've got an engine running in your vehicle, you'll have to maintain the vehicle's engine, otherwise it will give up on you sometimes when you don't expect it. Now, this definition in short, you can say something like confidentiality is a trust to keep. Confidentiality is a trust to keep. Confidentiality will cost you a great deal, chaplain. It will cost you not money, but it will cost you maybe something more than money. It will cost you maybe something else, you know, maybe the fact that many people, they think, oh, I've got my laser pointer here. My goodness, I got it. The fact that people misuse their confidence or misuse the fact that people has given them important information. That's a problem, because you cannot misuse it. You cannot use and abuse people's information or privacy. If they tell you something about the marriage, you have to keep it in your confidence. You have to keep it between you and the client. You cannot just speak on that. if you break that confidence, obviously you can kiss the department goodbye, and you can also say to the boss, I'm sorry, I broke a confidence, and I do not know how to fix that. Otherwise, you need to break clean with that. Confidentiality, this is the thing you have to remember for your assessment. Chaplains are counselors and must learn to think about confidentiality in terms of the following: personal confidences as well as agency confidences. In other words, this is not so important, but next one, personal confidence is when a person comes to you and gives you privileged information, or when it's an agency confidence, for example, when it's a security problem and you've got a tag on your finger, or they're using your thumbprint to open a door. That's agency confidences, because they trust you to open a door. They trust you with important information of the agency. Now, thirdly, confidentiality belongs to the client. This will be in the assessment. Confidentiality belongs to the client. Many of the chaplains, they make this one mistake, and they say confidentiality belongs to the chaplain. No, it doesn't. It belongs to the client. Confidentiality is the chaplain's to protect. We need to protect confidences of people with our lives, and because many people's jobs is in the line if you would break confidences. There's some confidentiality areas of concern for, and we're not going to do too much in this, but it's important just to take note in your mind that there's some areas of concern for the chaplain, and you have to just remember the first area of concern is the person-to-person confidentiality matters. So these 5 important areas, the chaplain must have an understanding to protect this information in the service of others. Because in actual fact, when you protect a confidence, you're actually servicing other people with counseling, with support, with maybe with moral support or spiritual support. It can be even mentorship. But in this case, a person-to-person kind of confidentiality areas of concern is like having a confidential relationship with these employees we serve in the marketplace. They must have absolutely confidence in the chaplain. When you go to the marketplace, they need to see you as a person they can relate to. They can get contact with, they can make contact with you, and you'll protect their confidences. And also, no trust in the marketplace or in person to person, no trust, no confidence. When people do not trust you, they won't confide in you. That's the bottom line. When they don't trust you, person to person, they won't confide in you. They won't tell you privileged information because they know that you'll speak about that. Sometimes in church, in the church area or in the churches, what we'll see is person to person break confidences. For example, I tell Brother Gil, hey brother, would you go and pray for me, please? You and Sonia, when you go to bed tonight, just do a prayer for me. Me and Marika are having some tough challenges in our marriage. And then what Gil does, he contacts Pastor Micaiah and he said, hey, Pastor Mac, would you pray for Brother Mornay and Marika because they're having a tough time in their marriage? And then Brother Micaiah contacts Wenzel and he says to Wenzel, oh my goodness, you better pray for that man. He's really hitting his wife badly, you know, and so on and so forth. And the problem with that is that it becomes a tale or a gossip. And obviously, we didn't maintain the confidences. Now, when we speak on agency and organization confidence or confidentiality, we will soon see as chaplains that they may trust the chaplain with private information at the workplace, or private information about the dynamics of the organization and the planning of what they will be doing on the Easter and where the roadblocks will be, or where the whatever situation they're planning. You'll know the passwords, the keys. You'll have access to the computer system. That's what we speak about when we speak about agency and organization confidentiality. Ultimately, this is where the chaplain wants to be. He wants to be trusted in the agency, because if you're not trusted by the owner of the business, or you're not trusted by the organization's operators, then obviously they won't give you any private information. Then obviously we have the confidence areas of concern is, and this is a big concern, and that's the area of media. These days, we've got social media, we've got a lot of outlets of media. You cannot trust every media outlet out there anymore. It's like hectic out there. We do not know where to listen to good news anymore. I guess the Bible would be the only way we can find good news. But in the sake of them, for the sake of the media and confidentiality regarding the media can become a real challenge for the chaplain, in a sense that an issue of pride and ego can arise in the chaplain, and he will speak boastfully about something in the marketplace or the agency which you are serving, or the church maybe, and he will speak boastfully about that. And unfortunately, through the media, you can burn bridges of confidences, bridges of friendships that you've been casting all your life. Contacts with the priest are normally forbidden or not forbidden by agencies, normally not, but yet they should always be cleared by the organization beforehand. In other words, say you're a chaplain in the police, they do not forbid you to speak to the media because you are your own private person, but run it through them and ask them about that, if it's acceptable for them, because many agencies, they will not allow you to speak to the media. They won't forbid it by standing order or operating order, but they would probably forbid it because they do not want every person leaking out information of the agency. Yet they should always be cleared by this organization before you speak to the media. Always check with the agency before giving interviews to the media. And therefore, you as a chaplain, you've been building relationship with the people in the agency, with the workplace, and you'll ask them, listen, can I speak to the media about suicide? Or can I speak about the media about the incident yesterday when the person burned, or whatever the case may be? Then the fourth area of concern for the chaplain in confidentiality regarding that is accessibility for ministry. This area deals with the chaplain's ability to be free and mobile in his work environment. The community services chaplain will be given access to areas of security and privacy within the marketplace. They'll see places, but you cannot see places if you're not able to go there and are able to visit these ministry opportunities or the marketplace ministry of presence. The chaplain will soon learn that he or she will be able to access these hard copies of files. They can even access computer files on the system without other employees even questioning what they are doing on the PC, because they are having this trusting relationship. So it creates an opportunity for ministry and obviously in the marketplace. A chaplain's personnel integrity will be tested, and when you are having this, if you have access codes in the workplace, especially in the computer system, your integrity will be tested to see if you're going to mismanage the privilege you have. Many people, they will mismanage government employees when as soon as you as a chaplain get out there and you do your thing as a chaplain, obviously people will start to love you. They will love you because you care for them. They will appreciate you, and they'll start to reach out to you, maybe a government employee, and so on and so forth, but to abuse this person, because remember now, government employees are used that people will abuse them. They are used to that. So they're just waiting for that moment when you're gonna ask the question everybody's asking: help me to squash this ticket, or help me with my water and lights bill, or help me with this summons the police gave me. They're just waiting for the chaplain also to ask favors in that regard. So yes, be mindful of that, because as soon as you do that, maybe your accessibility for ministry opportunity will be closed. That door will be closing in your face. Then fifthly, accordingly, in areas of concern, interdepartmental need to know information. Some info needs to only stay within the department. I mean, even if it's a sister department, for example, the police, they're planning a raid on drug trafficking here in town, and you as a chaplain feel you want to also call another police department and tell them, hey, we're focusing on a drug raid year and year. But watch out for that. You do not have permission to share that information. So yes, there's some information that's only need to know in that specific department. Even in hospitals, schools, and all over the show, it works the same. You need to get permission to share that information. Some things are private for a reason. Like the rates, for example, when you tell another police department about the rates you're going to have in town, those people maybe will phone all of their friends in the town, in the city, and warn them not to use anything tonight because there's going to be a rate in this area. So just be mindful of that. So there's some exceptions concerning confidentiality, and when you can break, obviously, the the principle of confidentiality, obligations to the agency to ensure that the employee's life is protected is so important. You need to understand that when a person threatens his own life and is suicidal, you need to report that. Even if the person would want you to keep it confident, and he wants you to keep quiet, but they've got this suicidal ideation, you need to tell somebody about that, because if that person is successful, you'll obviously have a big problem at hand. Even many years back, some of my colleagues, one of the senior supes at the time, he committed suicide, but he told everybody at HR, he told everybody in the department, but he didn't tell the chaplains about that, but he told them about his plan to commit suicide. He committed suicide later that evening, but we only learned about that afterwards, that he told everybody, he confided in them, and unfortunately, nobody looked out for him. And that is what we say about the threat to an individual's life. So there's three ways you can break confidence with a person, and you are covered. Obviously, when you break this kind of confidence, you are covered by law. They cannot sue you or anything like that. When a person is suicidal, homicidal, or genocidal, when a person wants to threaten another person's life, for example, a supervisor, a spouse, or a child even, you need to report that. The chaplain has a moral and an ethical responsibility to the agency to report these kind of things, and the lives of those who could be potentially affected by the actions of this counselee. And you need to report on that to protect the lives of other people. If the counselee comes to you and tells you, listen, pastor, chaplain, I'm going to kill my boss tonight with this firearm, of the police. He's maybe a cop or something, I'm going to shoot him tonight in his head. I'm going to kill his whole family. You need to report that. You cannot be quiet on that, because if you do not report that, you can also go to jail about that. It is to be understood, a community services chaplain will have to violate confidence. You need to understand, you have to violate your confidence with this person when you learn anything about the threat. Even the larger community, if they're threatening the larger community, for example, they're threatening the agency, they're going to plant a bomb, they're going to do this or that. Even if they threaten national security, they're going to do this or that, or they do not report defective equipment. When the brakes of the vehicle is gone, and this officer knows that my colleague needs to get to this patrol car, he'll be using this, and he doesn't report the brakes that's failing on the vehicle. Obviously, that's a threat actually to his colleague. You need to report that kind of behavior, because it's not the correct kind of behavior, because it poses a threat of harm to another person. The 3 R's of confidentiality you obviously will also get in your assessment. And the answer which we like to see is that you understand the 3 R's of confidentiality, but we won't ask you to elaborate on that. We'll just ask you, please name the 3 R's of confidentiality: rapport, respect, ramifications. As easy as that. So the first one, rapport. That is, personal relationships are the heartbeat of chaplaincy ministry. Personal relationships are the heartbeat of chaplaincy ministry. If you do not understand the word rapport, it can also be translated in harmony, or it can be translated in maybe something like sympathy or empathy. But it's the seed of all counseling relationships as it relates to counseling in the workplace. In other words, if you do not have rapport with people, if you do not have that connection with people, and that harmony with people, that rapport won't be the seed of a successful counseling session. Without the element of confidentiality, no rapport will ever be established between you and your counselee. When we speak on respect, the chaplain and client must have mutual respect, which facilitates effective ministry, obviously. This respect will help you to listen, and obviously the counselee will also listen. Respect is like a two-way street. It's like when you enter into the road and you respect your other road users, you'll stop at the stop signs. The chaplain and client, you must have this kind of mutual respect. You must enter onto this two-way street where you give something and the counselee gives something. If the chaplain does not respect the individual whom they counsel, the chaplain will be hard pressed to maintain the confidence. In other words, what it means, if you do not respect the client, you'll struggle to keep the confidence. So therefore, rapport and respect. And then the third thing, and the third R of confidentiality, the R is ramifications. So this is the consequences of protecting or violating confidentiality. The proverbial stone dropped into a pond. That's what it says. The proverbial stone. So in other words, there will be consequences. If confidence is violated, the ramifications can be embarrassment. It can even be a lawsuit when you speak on people's marriage problems. They can sue you about that. Even termination of your involvement with the organization, they can stop you from coming there. You've closed the door because you didn't consider there's ramifications in breaching a confidence. Remember, there's only 3 reasons why you breach a confidence: when a person wants to kill himself, kill somebody else, or kill a group of people. So your ministry will stop if you didn't calculate the cost of breaking your confidences. Therefore, we present you with this 3 R's so that you can that you can have rapport, that you can have respect, as well as consider ramifications when you breach a confidence. You can even lose, in our church, you can lose your credentials, your ministerial credentials. If the complaint is successful, you can lose that. But just to get back to this before we move to the next slide, the proverbial stone on the water. When you break a confidence, think about this for a moment. It's like you casting a stone on the pond or the dam. You know, you're putting this stone on the dam, and it makes this ripple effect. And that's what confidence is about. And when you speak about the person's confidence, the trusting information they gave you, when you speak on that, it's like you putting a stone on the water, and it's causing this ripple effect, boop, boop, through the stages and through the hallways of the agency you're serving. So you have to always remind yourself that there will be consequences for you. You need to understand these ramifications when you breach that confidentiality, like you're putting a stone on the pond. Note taking and tape recording. Some people, they do that still, you know. You must understand there's some legal rights about you taking notes about a person's issues, and many people out there, they won't feel comfortable with you taking notes about their situation. They won't feel comfortable because they'll say, oh my goodness, this person is taking notes. He'll send the notes to my wife or to my boss, and then I'll be in big trouble because of this notes you sent away, you know. So yes, we as chaplains need to understand they've got legal rights, and you also have legal rights, but you must understand that documents can be subpoenaed. When you have a tape on a counseling session with a counselee, and this counselee told you some privileged information, and it goes to court, not you and this client, but maybe the client and somebody else he spoke about in this conference and in this meeting with you, the client will obviously, you know, tell the court, hey, my counselor, he made some notes. I think you better subpoena that. Now, friend or not friend, obviously, when he wants to win the case, you'll be the baddie. You'll be the bad guy. So they'll subpoena your documents. So if you've got a notebook like this and you're making notes, you know, make notes on loose pages. Do not make notes in a hard book, like for example a journal or something, because when the courts subpoena your book, they'll subpoena all of the information in this book. They won't subpoena only the one page which you ripped out. They won't subpoena only that. they'll subpoena the whole book and they'll ask you about pages you have ripped out in the book, because that will be obviously you'll be charged with withholding information from the court. So they can even subpoena your tape recordings. They can subpoena that, you know. Also refrain from this if you can. If you can really refrain from this, if you do not have to take notes, especially in front of the eyes of this counselee. If you want to take notes, obviously, what I'll do is afterwards, I'll just make a couple of notes and say, I discussed this today with this client, la, la, la. I put the loose page, just one page like this, and put it in the cupboards where I file. And then obviously, next time before he comes, you'll draw out his file and say, oh, we discussed this and this and this. And today I'll just go on discussing some communication skills with him and etc. Definition of clergy and client privilege. The definition is like the following: legal implications relating confidentiality between chaplain and client, or clergy client privilege. So when we speak about chaplain, we also speak about clergy. Many people here in this room, we are clergy people, we are pastors, but remember, we should stop thinking exclusively as pastors. That's one of the axioms of chaplaincy. We'll have to stop thinking exclusively as pastors. And also you have to know as chaplain or as a clergy person, and then remember now, maybe you're involved in the community as a pastor. That's okay. You're also a chaplain in that regards, because chaplains, there's one saying I love, what Pastor Addie Burt, he always told us when we were younger. He said, you know, pastors go to heaven, chaplains go everywhere or anywhere. So yeah, also understand that there's some requirements you have to meet concerning privilege information inside of the agency. Also, do not assume anything. Do not assume that it's, you know, that they will give you the keys of the building, or, you know, it is imperative that the community services chaplain, the CSC, not make an automatic assumption of privilege. You know, expecting them to tell you everything. Do not make this automatic assumption of privilege when serving in a volunteer capacity in an organization. Even when you understand that private information needs to be protected, even by law, it's being protected. Know the laws of your country. Know the laws of South Africa or the United States where you are at. Know the laws of your state. Clergy persons have, or however, enjoyed a relative large amount of latitude in this area based on what is commonly referred as the sanctity of the confessional. When people come to you and they confess their sins, that you'll hold it private. That is anything, I mean, that is anything told to a clergy person in confidence, obviously, and told to this clergy person as they was acting in the capacity of spiritual advising this person. So in this case, circumstances, you need to understand the rapport, the respect and ramification if you would break that confidence. And be informed and get informed, get information about your rights also as a chaplain. Do not just go in, put your head into a beehive. What does clergy client privilege mean to you as an organization? What does it mean to you as a person? Do you feel that if you change roles, for example, I'm the chaplain and you are the counselee, and you know, or let's rather put you are the counselor and I'm the counselee, and I would want for myself that you would protect my confidence, that you would protect the important information I will be giving you, because as I give you this information, I'm actually giving you control over my situation. You know, as soon as you get this information, do not presume anything or assume anything. But when I give you this information, it's like ammunition you can use against me someday. And therefore, you as a chaplain should respect that confidence. You should respect it with your life and protect it with your life. An important question sometimes will arise: does the chaplain view herself as a credentialed clergy in the workplace? Do you view yourself as that? The workplace will obviously see you as a credentialed clergy person. Many chaplains, volunteer chaplains, I've started their own churches. I mean, it's their story, but But we do not provide this training for you to think that you've got ecclesiastical licensing now, but we are presenting this training to you so that you can find a spot in the community where you as a chaplain can be of a influence out there, because that's what life is all about. It's about influencing other people. Jesus came to this world, he influenced people. He just told the disciples, you follow me. And the same for the chaplain. You can go out there and make disciples, them not even knowing they're disciples. You can go under the umbrella of mentorship. And actually what you're doing is you are discipling them. The other question you can just take note of, this is not for your test, don't worry. What are the legal requirements of your country or state or your province in regards to the clergy-client privilege? Some states have very little in anything on the books to deal with this kind of privilege. Attorney-client privilege is more protected than any other kind of privilege. So when you confess to your attorney, so it's a good thing if the chaplain would be an attorney, that will be great, because that kind of privilege is more protected in our country than the privilege information is protected with obviously with the counselor and the counselee. And it's also so like that in America. So some important questions continue. Is the chaplain willing to view their relationship with the employees of the organization from the same depth of service as he or she does the church which they serve? In other words, in short, would you as a pastor maybe, and you're a chaplain, would you respect the information in the marketplace the same as you would respect the information of your own people inside of your church and your congregation? Does the chaplain genuinely view them serving as spiritual advisor or spiritual counselor to the agency and the employees? Many chaplains will go from this training and they won't do counseling because they feel that they're not up to it right now, but maybe after some more training you can be up to that. But they will go from this training and they won't feel that they will be their spiritual counselors. They will just feel they can do spiritual advising. But more or less that's the same thing. You know, you being an advisor and a counselor is kind of the same thing, but many people, they do not want to get involved with counseling because they feel it's a prolonged process and they're not up to it. They're just gonna eat and run like the old days when we eat and run. Even before even if before the plate is called, you're out of the door, something like that. Does the client view you as their spiritual advisor? Do they view you as that? Does the agency even view you as their spiritual advisor? You need to build a relationship so that they can have also rapport towards you, have respect towards you, and also measure the ramifications should they not allow you to be the workplace spiritual advisor. So it works both ways. As I said earlier, confidentiality works like a two-way street. Last question there. Does the agency give the chaplain the sanctity of the confessional? In other words, do they allow you to have this time of confessions where people will come to you and make these confessions to you? All questions should be affirmative to legally claim this client and clergy privilege. So would the agency allow that? If government allows that, would the agency allow that? Because every agency's got their own policy about client and clergy privileges, obviously, and then but you need to investigate as soon as you are a chaplain in that kind of environment. So also know the law and agency government clergy client privileges. Know the agency guidelines. Inform your client about your next steps. So if the client told you that he's going to commit suicide, and don't phone anybody, chaplain, don't phone anybody. He just phoned you and told you he's going to commit suicide. Inform the client that you will tell somebody right now that they come to you, to assist and to help. The fact is, chaplains are subject to court subpoena if deemed necessary to gain access to counseling information in notes and videotapes. Just remember, be mindful of that. Know the law and the agency guidelines. This is just a case study you can just think about, and maybe you can do the answers at home because this is also in your manual. You'll find it in the last pages there of this short study. A chaplain works for the local police department. This is the case study now. Initial training empathetically states that not all aspects of personal counseling is to be considered confidential. What does it say? It actually says that not all information that they discuss with you are considered confidential, because some information they'll discuss with you, you may relate to them. This is what their policy says. Information relating to a spouse and child abuse and threats to life and limb are to be taken seriously. This is the case in all security departments in the world, actually. It's like when a police officer eats his wife, he'll go to jail because it's against the law. Now, I don't know in South Africa, though. I mean, Gil and some other police officers, they will know. Many abusers out there are police officers. So if they threat the life and limb, these things needs to be taken seriously, but not privately held. You cannot withhold this kind of information from the agency where you report. If you are a police or a local police department chaplain, you need to report on that. You cannot hold it for yourself. You cannot hold it for yourself and say, yeah, and I knew about that, but yeah, I didn't think you would kill her, you know. In light of this, the agency's policies discuss the following now. The questions are as follows. How does policy conflict or coincide with your view of ministry and personal rights? Is there maybe somebody that would like to enlighten us? Maybe you've got an answer to that. If not, that's okay. You can just scribble in your manual your answer at your own good time or at your own convenience. But the first one, how does policy conflict? I'm talking about this policy conflict now. Over here, when they say to you, listen, not all aspects of personal counseling is to be considered confidential. Do you think you, as a chaplain or a clergy person, would be able to, you know, to say, but I've got also a right to keep this information for myself? The second question, if you want to answer this question, you're most welcome to do so. What persons or person would you like to consult with on the issues? So when you have an issue in the workplace, I'm just going to explain a little bit further. If you have an issue in the workplace, with whom do you want to speak to make sure about your rights as a chaplain or as your rights as a confidant in this important information that was shared to you? Because if some important information comes your way and you do not know if you have to speak to somebody about that, who will you phone? Who would you talk to? Don't put it on the group on WhatsApp and say, hey guys, I'm reporting to the Rustenburg police station as a chaplain, and this is the information I got. No, don't do it like that. Contact somebody privately then. All right. And then thirdly, what biblical theological themes apply to this issue? Obviously, there's many issues in the Bible about suicides, about breaking confidences and trusting other people. Nobody builds his house on sand. You build your house on a rock. So yeah, obviously the theological wise, there's many things you can apply to your confidentiality issue. Because the issue isn't really with you, chaplain, the issue is actually with the client. Remember, you're there for the client. The issue is not with you, because if you want to speak to somebody about confidential information, you do not speak to your people in the marketplace. You'll speak to another chaplain, one of your confidants, one of your people you trust, one of the people maybe close to you where you can sit down having a cup of coffee or a lunch. Yeah. Any questions? Oh, you're so quiet tonight. If you fall asleep, just do this so that your ears can flap you awake. All right. So if there be no, I see you sleeping, man. So if there's no other questions, maybe we can just move on. Do you want to take a leg stretch? Maybe let's take a 5-minute break. Let's take a 5-minute leg stretcher, and then we'll push with peer support after this 5-minute break. Okay, go and make yourself some coffee. Let's be back 8:05, please. Well, break is over. 5 minutes or almost 5 minutes. Welcome back. We're going to discuss peer support and how it affects our daily duties as chaplains. And what do we mean about that? We will share with you in a minute. There we go. You'll find that on page 16. You can just turn a page to page 16 and see the definitions of peer support. Remember that when we speak on peer support, the chaplain may never be the peer of the agency. For example, when you're community services chaplain or a CSC and you're doing some chaplaincy duties at the police station, you can never be their peer or their equal. It's impossible to be the equal of a cop when you're not a cop. It's impossible to be the equal of a taxi driver when you're not a taxi driver yourself. So it's better then to set up a peer support group or a peer support group system in the marketplace where you as a chaplain function. So to better serve this agency, my advice to you is then to obviously put up a peer support program. So peer, the Webster defines peer as an equal. Chaplains may have strong relationships with those they serve, but they are not equals. Therefore, we need to have a peer support system in the workplace. You as a chaplain, you can train a peer support chairperson, or what do you want to call them, a champion. Let's call them rather a champion, a peer support champion. I was a peer support champion for the HIV in my department, and if there was something about HIV or AIDS, they would contact me in my office so that I was a champion for a very long time about HIV/AIDS. Then chaplains understand peer relationships in a specialized way. We are a special breed of people, and therefore we discuss these kind of things so that we can better understand why we need a peer support system in the workplace. We need a peer support system because the peers can support these people much better than we can. Therefore, when you as a grief counselor, when you do some grief counseling, the best person to do grief counseling is the person who also felt a loss. If you haven't lost a child before, it's very difficult to have sympathy with a person who had lost a child. You may have empathy, but not sympathy, because you can never feel the way that person feels. So it's very important, and there is much value in peer support, and in these words in our manual, be there, done that. One thing that makes us a peer with someone else is simply the fact that we are a human. All of us are humans, and that makes us peers in that way. So when we speak on humanity and morals, maybe we are peers, but in police, maybe not. In hospital, maybe not. In school, maybe not, because you're not a teacher. And if you're a teacher, obviously you can relate with peer support in that sense. But it's very important. There is much value in setting up a peer support group. Peer relationships are defined as fellow laborers in type of training or training. In other words, we as chaplains, we are all peers in the sense that we have been trained as community services chaplains. We are running for the same targets, we have the same training. Equals in rank or status even doesn't make us necessarily peers. In other words, when a person is a colonel, he may not be the peer of a sergeant, because the sergeant may never feel how it feels to be a colonel, but the colonel may feel how he may know how it felt to be a sergeant. Veterans or similar experiences, these are always important places where you can set up peer support groups. And other places you can put up peer support groups is the experiential experiences such as illness. This is also a place where you can provide peer support groups, and where you can maybe facilitate and lodging peer support groups in hospitals, in places of where people are ill, like step downs and so on and so forth. And also grief support groups. You can set up a grief support group for people who have lost a child, who have lost somebody close to them. And also, social status or position. That can also provide for you a place where you can initially set up a peer support program for people in certain social statuses, as well as shared ethnicity, also shared racial heritage. These are all opportunities for the chaplain to get up there and put up some peer support programs. Peer relationships. The CSC will often work as a peer advisor. You can work as a peer advisor to the agency. You won't be the peer supporter, but you can be the advisor or the support person who they can speak to when they want to set up a peer support program. A peer support programs is very important in the agency, very, very much. You'll see in a minute or two that it can save a lot of money for the agency. The captain may know how it feels like a sergeant, as I said, or the colonel, but the sergeant will never know how it feels to be a captain or a colonel until they are promoted to that. Once a peer status or rank changes, the ability to relate diminishes. In other words, as soon as your status changes, for example, when you are a peer support agent or a peer support person and you are facilitating a group of constables in the police department and you are the peer support leader, and as soon as you become a sergeant, that relationship diminishes because you're not a peer anymore of those people, because they are another rank, they're another kind of, there are other people at that stage. Peer support or peer relationships do not always provide the understanding required to identify the needs, which are problem areas for those, excuse me, the CSC serves. And also rank conscious environment, especially when you're working in a rank conscious environment, it can create a lot of issues for your dilemmas, where obviously you have to make connections with the employee assistance program or the ESPs or emergency services personnel. They're not so much rank conscious, but in the police side or in the defense or in the fleet and security services cluster, there are rank conscious environments. So you have to understand, when you go there as a peer advisor, a peer support advisor, you'll have to understand there is different ranks and you need to be conscious about their environment. Do some study before you go there to understand their ranking systems. The value of peer support is found in the words, been there, done that, as I said. Family and friends do not understand the unique stresses the ESP, for example, faces. When you speak to an ESP, there many people out there do not understand that the ESP is under a lot of stress out there. In the morning, coming on shift, they're not aware of the stress they'll have today. And therefore, when it's a peer support group, they can always get together after the shift to discuss the relevancy of today's things and what happened, and was everybody okay? Is there anybody in need of counseling? Is there anybody in need of some more support, moral support, whatever the case may be? Do anybody need a cold drink or a day off? Peer support is needed because peers relate to each other since they have experienced similar situations, similar experiences in the same ranking, in the same environment, and they would be best to help each other, and helping each other being a crutch for one another in that environment. So this estimate is roughly 1.5 million can be saved by a good peer support program in your workplace. I'm not talking about 1.5 million for the whole department. If it's a huge department like the SANDF or the SAPS or the Metropolitan Police Departments, you can save the department millions of rands. So if you would want to, as a chaplain, find yourself a place of influence. Remember what I said earlier in my opening statement is that we as chaplains, we are influencers. We need to go out there and influence the world like Jesus influenced the world. Many years back, he was one of the best chaplains out there. So Jesus influenced the world and he actually saved the world. And in the same way, you as a chaplain, if you can identify some place where you can be a chaplain and you can put up a support group or 2 or 3 or 4 even, then obviously you'll save that department millions of rands over here. You know, because when the person is involved in a good peer support program, obviously they won't take off sick leave so often as they do. They won't go on post-traumatic stress, you know, leave. Did you know that post-traumatic stress disorder is now one of the IODs in, you know, when you get injury on duty, IOD, it can be reported as an IOD now these days. If you've got post-traumatic stress or PTSD in the police, it's been like this for a couple of years now. So yeah, you can see that a chaplain cannot serve a peer, but be instrumental in helping the agency to support the peers, to support the employees, maybe do a prayer, opening up with a prayer and scripture, and then give over to the peer support group leader, and so that he or she can go on with the group, discussing the day's effects, and just wait outside the door, maybe if you can, and to see who would be coming for some more and more counseling. So the peer support group, the chaplain cannot serve as a peer, but can help create this group. You can create a group and you can give some instructions to people who feels led to lead this kind of group and to keep it together. Normally, it's not the most popular person, but it's the most willing person who's got a heart for the well-being of the department. Many years back, the CTM, they've established a peer support group for HIV. CTM is City of Tshwane. I don't really believe it worked all that well, but in the process, we did a lot of peer educating regarding HIV and AIDS. When we instructed people, actually, we instructed hundreds and hundreds of people to go for some voluntary testing and counseling, and we instructed people to be safe. You know, we as chaplains, we never condomized people, and the local government wanted us to dish out some condoms back in the day. I can remember that. They would have, you know, the city council would drop a couple of boxes of condoms in the chaplain's office and give us instruction to share them with the people we counsel. And obviously we refuse that. We cannot do that because we do not believe in the ABC of HIV. Abstain, be faithful, and condomize. No, we say abstain, be faithful, and obviously Christianize. So yeah, we are different. We are a different breed. Excuse me. Work with a member of the agency and then find a meeting site that is outside the agency's facilities. Why is that? We do not want you know, one of the bosses or the owners of the company to get into the middle of this meeting. Find an established model and use this model. You can find it on Google. You can find many models. If you'd like us to assist you in finding a best practice model in establishing a peer support group, we can do that. Even this training you've got in your manual, if you want to write a letter to the owners of the company, I believe it's in this manual or in level 1's manual. You can find a couple of letters at the back of the manual just to ask the what you call it, the marketplace you want to be involved in, marketplace ministry, or you want to establish peer support groups. Select the leaders for these groups. You do not have to have only one group. I mean, you can have different kind of groups. Group for suicidal people. I mean, therefore they cannot meet in the workplace. If somebody passes by and they'll ask them, hey, what group is this? Oh no, this is the suicidal people. No, just meet outside of the workplace. Or maybe is the psychological affected people, you know, or maybe the ones who lost somebody in life. Yeah, so that's why we take it outside of the workplace. Not everyone is suited to lead. You'll see as chaplain, not everybody is suited to lead out there. Leaders must be genuine in their concern for their employees or for the affected people. Leaders must be a person of trust. You cannot put anybody in there. If the person you want to put in there is a strong social person and he breaks confidences with some other people in the marketplace or at his work site, obviously that is not a good idea to put him as the leader for the group. It's not good at all. Leaders must be non-judgmental. You cannot be a judgmental person and be a peer support group leader. I mean, if I think about a couple of people in my own life, people who's very judgmental, I will never ask them to lead a peer support group because, you know, that will be damaging. It will be damaging for me as a counselor, as well as a chaplain and an ordained pastor, but it will also be damaging to the establishment or the marketplace or the agency where you as a chaplain do your work. It will damage your work there. The things you have been building up for years and years, and you put this this judgmental kind of person obviously it will damage your establishment, the things you have to establish in the workplace. Then I'm sorry, leaders must understand depression. So yeah, you just need to take note of what is depression. What, when people say to you, listen, chaplain, I've got some depression, you need to understand what depression is. So you have to train the peer support group leader about depression. You'll have to tell them, listen, this is some definitions of depression. This is how you speak to people with depression. This is what you do with people with depression. If they're suicidal, you'll just send them to me. Or this is the way you speak to people with alcohol and drug abuse. It's also good to take some training in alcohol and drug abuse, measurements, and what can you do with a person that's an alcoholic or a drug abuser? Where do you send them? You get some numbers on your phone, keep some numbers on your phone where you can take people that is misusing drugs and alcohol. Many times when a person is full-time employed with the Department of Police or Defense or any state agency or some other security clusters, they've got medical schemes paying for their depression sessions. They've got medical schemes paying for their 2-3 weeks breakout or stay away from job at a clinic or something, and even alcohol clinics and drug clinics. Also understand relationship issues. Remember our video yesterday, the video of baggage, which I didn't send you. Oh my goodness, I forgot about that, but I'll remember sooner or later. But when we spoke about relationships, and we said yesterday that baggage makes relationships difficult. And that's the problem, the baggage of the past. And I ask you this very question: which day is the most important? Yesterday, today, or tomorrow? Which one is most important? We said, well, not yesterday because it's gone. Not tomorrow because we don't know what's going to happen tomorrow. But today is a present, is a gift. Today is important. So also teach your peer support group leaders about suicide, that they will know the indicators of suicidal people, the indicators of breaking a confidence after a peer support group meeting. And this constable, for example, said, I'm going to kill constable, or I'm going to kill colonel so-and-so. They'll have to report that so that they can not be in trouble later on. Critical incident stress, we've done that in a great deal in level 1, as well as post-traumatic stress disorder. You can just go back to your manuals in level 1 to see how you can instruct and help people in the peer support group programs, how to understand these kind of topics better, because it's important for the leader of the peer support group to have not a broad knowledge of this, but a very slim knowledge of this, and just to know enough to just keep the people busy for at least 20 to 25 minutes in a peer support group. You do not want peer support groups to sit there for 2 to 3 hours. It's not a good thing. The chaplain can provide the training necessary for the leader to develop the knowledge and skills needed. You going through this training will help the peer support group program. You can even enroll some people you identify in the workplace or the agency into this kind of training. You can even present this kind of training, but not an official one, obviously, but you can instruct them and help them to set up the peer support program to assist the leaders and to develop the leaders a little bit better, as well as doing some mentorship with them. What the peer support program is not. This is the things a peer support program is not. It's not a union meeting, people. It's not a union meeting. Don't think when people come together as peer support supporters, or people in want for need for support from the workplace, don't think that that's a union meeting. This guy says peer support keeps us running, or keep me running, and that's the thing. It keeps the heartbeats. When you sit in a peer support program, even be it depression, alcohol abuse, or whatever the case may be, you relate to other people's issues and dilemmas they're facing, and you'll see that, oh my goodness, I thought I was the only one in this whole of the department who's facing depression, who's facing relationship issues, who's facing suicidal thoughts and thinking. Also, it's not a gripe session for to complain about the boss, to complain about your wife, to complain about this and this and this. It's a support group. How to deal to be better, the better you. One day, I said, somebody told me that she wants to marry the right guy someday. I said to her, why why do you want to marry the right guy? Just be the right girl. That's what you need to do. Just be the right girl for this guy. And he will also need to be the right man for this girl, obviously. And also, it's not therapy. Peer support is not therapy. This peer support group leader is not qualified to do any therapy whatsoever in the sessions. If if this people needs therapy, they need to make an appointment with a therapist to see this kind of disciplined people. It's not an advice session. You do not give advice at the peer support group. And this is the kind of training you need to provide for your people that will be leading and hosting these kind of sessions. Very important. Remember now, chaplain, it saves millions of rands to big agencies, millions. And in the smaller agencies, peer support programs can also save thousands of rands for the industry, for the pizza place, for the hospital. I mean, for the police, it can save thousands of rands. So it's not an advice session. It's also not a place to solve problems. You're not there to solve your problem. You're there to talk about your problem, to relate with other people who's having the same challenges. So what makes you peers? Because you are depressed and I'm depressed. That makes us peers. And we are both police officers, for example. And we all, both of us, we face the same dilemma. Also, it's not a place to criticize the administration or the bosses. It's not a place to gripe, and say, oh, my boss is so bad. And then you're not there for the boss. You're there for yourself. You're there for yourself. So there's some dynamics in peer support program, in the peer support groups. And some of the dynamics are as follows. You have to provide an outline. We have to provide an outline for the person who's providing peer support. You can put it in pen down for this person so that they will just keep to these guidelines or the outline of this dynamics in peer support. Developing rapport with the people, developing harmony in the group, like connecting with people. The peer support group leader, he needs to develop rapport with the ones he's having in his classroom or in his session. You'll have to have this connection with them. Also, facilitative listening is also a good thing, because you cannot do anything without good facilitative listening. If you're a support group leader, a peer support group leader, and you're not a good listener, you're not a good group peer support group leader. It's impossible. You need to facilitate the listening and train yourself the skill of listening. Remember, the more you listen, obviously the better information you'll get. Facilitative listening also means that you do facilitative summarization. For example, when you have been listening in the classroom or in the peer support group, what the people were speaking about, and then obviously, and you have listened well, you'll take mental notes about what these people said, and you'll say, okay, Dixon, you said that you're having trouble with depression because of this and this and this. So would you say, Dixon, if you can sort out your relationship with your kids, or you can sort out your relationship with this and this, it can help you to overcome your depression? Do you think so? That's what we call, well, you have firstly had facilitative listening good at what Dixon said, and then obviously you do a summarization of what he just translated and what he just told the group. Then obviously you need to confront people with the truth, confront people with what they need to hear, not what they want to hear. There's a big difference. I wish that my wife will always tell me what I want to hear, but sometimes she needs to tell me what I need to hear. Some others, they also need to tell me what I need to hear sometimes, and especially when God speaks to us, we want him to tell us what we need to hear, not what we want to hear, because I would want to hear how good a person I am and what, but you need to be confronted with the truth. You need to be confronted with the fact that the reason why you're depressed, Monet, is because you do not spend enough time in your Bible. Or remember now, this is not a theological session, obviously, but I'm a pastor. If I'm in a peer support program for pastors who is depressed, and obviously the group leader, he will facilitate this group session, and he'll confront me with the fact that if I'm not reading the Bible enough, if I'm not praying enough, it will make me depressed. Then the fifth support dynamic and outline, you can provide this just as on the page for this group leader. Ask open-ended questions. Do not ask closed-ended questions. Like, for example, an open-ended question is questions like, okay, let me just start with a closed-ended question. If you ask a question, it's hot today, eh? So in other words, you know already the answer to that, because everybody's taking out of their sweaters, or they're taking off their jackets because it's hot. Or a closed-ended question is obviously questions that has answers like yes and no. But when you ask an open-ended question, you need some explanation. For example, Brother Monet, or Brother Chris, let's use Chris's name a little bit, Brother Chris, I just want to ask you a question. Do you explain to me, you said you loved your wife, but explain to me, how do you love your wife? That's an open-ended question. You want some more information inside of this, of the session, because that information Brother Chris gives can be vital for the growth of the group, especially when you're in a session with people that's having relationship problems and issues, and they're really struggling with their past. They cannot get to the future because their past is holding them back. The past is kind of, even blindfolding them so that they cannot see. Remember our coins yesterday evening. And also immediacy of the need of providing this program for the employees at the in the marketplace or in the agency, and taking action, obviously very important. Lastly, there, you need to take action. It doesn't help you sit around and do peer support for hours and hours and hours every day, every so often, and you train 20 people doing leadership in peer support groups. It doesn't matter if you do not take action. Everything works with action. At the end, you need to take action. Peer support groups really works. It really works wonders. I cannot overemphasize that. I've seen through the years that in chaplaincy, if you present something in an environment where you have set up a peer support program, it's very dramatic sometimes, but also very beneficial for the department as well as the individual, so that they can learn. So when you want to develop rapport, you have to look at non-verbal behaviors. When you want to connect to people, in other words, you can develop rapport with anybody. You can develop rapport with a person in a, remember, this is the information you want to give to the peer support group leaders. You want them to develop rapport in the group. But as pastors and as chaplains, we every day, when we go about our ministries, for example, when I go to the school tomorrow morning to minister to the grade 12s, obviously I want to develop rapport with them, so they will check out my non-verbal behaviors. For example, if I speak to them one-on-one or in a group setting, I'll need to sit face to face with them like this. I won't turn my back like this and just show them the side of my face. I want to sit face to face with them. And also, when you speak one-on-one or even in a smaller group, you want to maintain eye contact with them. You want to put your eyes in their eyes. You want to look straight into their eyes. This segment of work will help you to facilitate a peer support group chaplain, or even just setting up these sessions, and you get the right leadership to lead this program, and you move yourself away, obviously, from the peer support group. Even when you want to do some non-verbal behaviors, you'll just lean a little bit forward. Obviously, we also covered this, some of this in our first manual, but it's important to know that when you want to develop the non-verbal behavior in developing rapport, you'll have to just show interest by sitting to the front, nodding. It shows that you are really listening, and you are doing facilitative listening, obviously, and then smile. If it's something good, obviously. Do not smile when they tell you, listen, chaplain, I've been depressed since my baby died. No, you don't. Yeah, you smile at the appropriate times, obviously. And because they'll know when you smile, when they give you bad news, you're not even listening to them. So did you smile today? So then to develop rapport a little bit further, you need to have paraverbal behaviors also. Paraverbal behaviors include tone of voice. Your voice, I mean, my voice can be frustrating to you tonight. Even if you're very tired, the more frustrating my voice will sound. But you have to change your tone of voice sometimes so that they will, that's what we call paraverbal behaviors. Sound of non-specific meanings. Yeah, grunt, ooh, huh? Are you sure? So yeah, this is the ways we get involved with the communication, and we build communication bridges, and that's what we call paraverbal communications. And some verbal behaviors is like assurance of confidentiality. When you speak on confidentiality and you tell the person, listen, I want to speak to you about a very important thing. And then before he completes his sentence, you say, okay, wait a minute. Very important things means it's confidential, it's an issue of confidentiality. Then you assure them that you are a person of confidence. When they tell you anything, you will keep it in your confidence. Actually, if people really know you as a chaplain, they will never ask you chaplain, I want to tell you something, but you need to keep it for yourself. They don't need to tell you this when they trust you, obviously. Even my wife, I don't have to ask her, listen, mustn't say anything to anybody, because I trust her completely. In other words, if they trust the chaplain completely, or the peer support group leader for that matter, obviously, you'll have to tell them, listen, there's 3 reasons I'm going to breach confidentiality today. And the first one is, if you want to commit suicide, I'm going to speak out. And the second thing is, if you're going to kill somebody, I'm going to speak out. If you're going to kill some other people in the workplace, more than 1 or 2 or 3, I'm going to speak out. Assurance, you are there to listen. This is verbal behaviors. And you'll tell them as a group leader, listen, I'm here to listen to you. It's like this guy in this picture. She's thinking, is he listening? And he's just thinking to himself, blah, 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 blah. No, this is a guy who's boring. You do not sit like this in a counseling session or a peer support group meeting and listen to a person, No, you show interest. You lean a little bit forward. You catch the, you differ your tone of voice and all of that. Now, also echoing something, like repeating words or phrases that the person used and in clarification of the matter. For example, the officer, I got so angry at myself last night. And so the peer support group leader would say, angry? Or you were angry. So yeah, that is what we call echoing. And it also helps you to elaborate on some things, because maybe the officer didn't mean he was really angry when he got there. Because if he was angry when he got there, it's a problem. You were angry at the scene, or you were angry before the scene. So yeah, that's what we call echoing, and that will elaborate a little bit further, so that it can help the officer to think about what happened and transpired before he makes his statement on what happened that evening. And also reflection of some facilitative listening, obviously reflection of content, summarizing what you have heard. Employee would say something like, what really bothers me about the incident is that I keep having nightmares and backflashes. So the peer support group leader would come with a question like this, and he'll say, your major concern then is that you are having flashbacks and nightmares. So it shows the counselee or the peer support group supporter, or the person who's needing of support, it shows them that the peer support group leader is really concerned about their well-being. It gives them the assurance of they are listening and seeking to understand what I'm going through in this department or in my job. Then reflection of feeling without judgment, judgment conveying acceptance. Reflection of content and feeling are 2 very important aspects of peer support expressing. For example, like empathy, feeling with another person, and also unconditional acceptance of what they are feeling at that stage, not being judgmental about their anger, not being judgmental, but just having facilitative listening with no judgment, and just conveying your acceptance of what they are saying to you, as well as what they are going through and what they are feeling inside. Then facilitative summarization, and obviously clarifies at the end, clarifies if the peer support group is following what is being said at the end. Let me see if I have this right. That's one of the questions, or one of the remarks the peer support group leader can make. Or I want to make sure I understand what you have been saying to me. That is what we call facilitative summarization. You as a peer support group leader facilitating what happens. Now, your question would probably be, can a chaplain be a peer support group leader? Yes, you can, if you are a peer of a person or peer of a group of people. For example, when you work at Telkom and you're a CSC, a community services chaplain, you can be a peer support group leader, because then you can peer support, you can have a group of people in Telkom working for Telkom at the administrative blocks, and you can have a depression peer support program running. The goal is to have the individual feel you really hear what he or she has been saying. And this is why we do facilitative listening. And even in my counseling sessions, I would always employ facilitative listening as well as facilitative summarization, asking the couple, so this is what you tell me, this is what you're saying. Oh, yeah, they need to confirm that, because then when you ask them that, they'll rethink, is it really what I meant? Because this is how it sounded for the peer support group leader. Maybe I must change my objective about this. Then the confrontation, you know, when you get to the point of confrontation, this is the difficult part, because many people do not like confrontation, not getting angry, but pointing out discrepancies in the person's presentation of the problem. In other words, John, you said earlier you felt appreciation for everything the company does or has done for you since you lost your house. Then you said, this company stinks. Please help me to understand what you mean. So after facilitative listening and facilitative summarization, you obviously confront this person and ask him, listen, you said you're thankful to the workplace, but then you also said you hate this place. What do you mean about that? So this is what we call confrontation. You asking this kind of questions to the attendees. Then also attendance, or ask open-ended questions. Ask open-ended questions, yes or no, which I've mentioned. Closed questions, do you like your supervisor? Yes or no? Or an open one, tell me more about your supervisor. Do you really know your supervisor? What do you think about your supervisor? These are all then open-ended questions. The ones who's closed is the ones with a yes or a no answer. Help the person explain their thoughts and feelings. You know, help them to explain what they're feeling in regards with what they're going through in the workplace. Then also immediacy. Immediate refers to the present time. You need to act now. Sometimes an individual will drift into talking about the past all the time. You know, I just hate that when people always refer to the past, and the past is so bad, and that and that. It means they've been carrying baggage all their lives, you know, into the future. You know, for the sake of peer support group meetings, you do not focus on the past too much. You focus on the present, immediacy. In other words, today. Don't drift away in talking about the past and going back 10 years back, 20 years back. It is important to help the person focus on their present, here and now, feelings and thoughts about the subject at hand, obviously. Then, obviously, you want to lead them to action. You want to take action, and you want them to, to take immediate action. But you give permission to say no to support. You can't say no to support. If you do not want support, say no. If you don't want me to speak to you, say no. One session is not all that is needed in peer support group meetings. They need to come together regularly. Maybe not every week, maybe every second week or every third week. Maybe once a month they can get together and to support one another. But one session is not all that is needed, especially when you speak to people who's involved in drugs and alcohol and depressed and relationship issues and so on and so forth. Several sessions are needed for adequate support and adjustments in their private lives, in adjustment in the relationships, and whatever case and situations they are facing. Referral to mental health professionals can also, you know, be one of the options in taking action. If you see peer support programs doesn't affect or doesn't influence this person too much, and he just stays the same, he's angry, he's always angry, then obviously you'll refer this person for mental health professional therapy. So yeah, then obviously that's the end of tonight. What I wanted to explain to you tonight about peer support, as well as maintaining your confidentiality. Yeah, any questions? Nothing. Nicolene, nothing. Okay, you want to go to bed, I guess. I want to go to bed. I had an early morning. Woke up what 12:30 last night already. So yeah, if there be no questions, I'm happy to leave you then.
Sorry, Pastor Monet, I think there was a question from Agnes from Zambia in the chat.
Oh, okay. Let me just see if I see that question. Let me just close my share of sharing of my screen because I cannot see any chats when I share screen. Actually, I cannot see anything about, when I share the screen. Um, Agnes, thank you, Pastor Mac. What happens if the person that you have shared with or consulted breaks the confidentiality? Do we bear the consequences, or how best can it be handled? Yes, dear sister Agnes, Adaka, this is the problem. This is the price we need to pay. If you put confidence in a person and they break your confidences, obviously you can sue them if you want to, but when you're a chaplain, we don't do the sue thing. We just pray for them. We'll move on. Not trusting them anymore. Obviously, I won't. If a person breaks confidences with me, many times they will do that. For example, we had a chaplain many years back. I forewarned him about some issues in his life, and I told him, "Listen, this is the problem." But when he was when he was asked to leave, he blamed me about what transpired over there, and unfortunately, he broke his own confidence. Actually, not me. So I just kept quiet about everything what transpired in that sense. But in the end, unfortunately, we have to bear the consequences. We have to pay the price, the penalty. But we do not carry that load alone. Jesus helps us with that every day. Yeah, that's so true, Shanagil. In these COVID times, it's so important to think about the effect of masks that covers your face or your smile. It often hinders engagements. Yeah, I often take my mask off to when I interact with people in my office or wherever the case may be. I take it off so that I can have contact with these people with my expressions in my face. And even in schools these days, we see a lot of children getting anxious, if I can use that word correctly. Some children that are very anxious, and some even suffer anxiety attacks. And I'm talking about small children in primary school because of the mask. They're covering up themselves the whole time. And I just wish this time can just go away, and so that our kids can normalize again and be the kids they're supposed to be. So the mask is a really big problem and a threat to our social development, especially in the schools, in the primary school, for example. The high school children, they're another breed. They don't even wear the mask all the time. They just put the mask here on their faces, but the faces are always open. But in primary school, they force the kids to be masked, and that's not good. But anyhow, well, thank you so much for everybody's acquaintance tonight, and I'm looking forward for our next session, because when we get together on Thursday night, we'll be discussing brainwashing or false conversions. Brainwashing or false conversions. We'll also show you a video insert on Thursday night. It's going to be a hectic session, so get your rest before you come into the classroom, because there's a lot of takeaways on Thursday. Nevertheless, tomorrow night we'll have discipleship here at church. If you in your congregation haven't seen the book of Multiply, the book's name is Multiply. It's for free on the website of, what's the guy's name? Oh, come on now, I forget his name. Phil, what's his name again, man? Well, let me just go to my documents real quick. I forgot his name. Come on. Well, we're going to discuss his book from tomorrow night, and it's a very good book. It's called Multiply, and the book was written by Francis Chan. Francis Chan, yeah.
Francis Chan.
Yeah, Francis Chan, yes. A very good book, and also forwarded by David Platt. So yes, we're going to use that. It's for free on Brother Francis Chan's website. You can get it there for free. May the Lord bless you tonight as you go home and do your business as a mother or a father, or as a cook, and enjoy the rest of your evening. Thank you for being here tonight. God bless you all.